let's start off with a fairly, a one for the room. Can someone give me some advice? I'm currently attempting to write a paper, but I struggle with actually sitting down and writing because I dislike my writing and the act of writing, and this causes me to get distracted by anything/everything. Could I get some advice from the room on how to get through this?
Oh, can I go first?
Please do.
So I hate writing. Absolutely hate doing it. I'm really good at it.
Huh.
That's a weird thing to say, but I hate the process and I hate doing it. But all throughout school, I would hand in stuff, and my teachers and profs would, like, in interviews, would say to my parents, like, is he going to be a journalist? He really knows how to, like, do it. And it's like, no, he's not, because he hates writing. But what got me through being able to write stuff was a couple of things. The first was, my dad taught me, he's like, don't start writing immediately. He's like, you should have notes. I'm like, yeah, but I hate writing notes. He's like, yeah, but don't think of it as writing notes. What you need to think of it as is like, you know what the structure of your essay is supposed to look like. So if you know what one of your paragraphs is supposed to be, don't worry about the opening and don't worry about the ending. Just write what the first paragraph is about in like a single sentence, and then just put in point four notes below it. And just be like, yeah, because to support that I need to mention this one thing, I need to mention this other thing, and maybe I need to mention a third thing. So just write down what those three things are. Then forget about that and move on to the next one. Unless you're feeling the flow, in which case maybe flesh it out a little. And then do that the amount of times you need to do it to back up whatever it is you're talking about. Then you can go back to the beginning, because word processes are great for that. Go back to the beginning and talk a little bit about the things you want to do to open this, to kind of draw it together, or go to the end and talk about how everything should be drawn to a close if you want to do that. But concentrate on the meat in the middle, because the meat in the middle, because you have to provide that, and somebody else did the work for you because they've already talked about those things, and you have to actually say, well, I can just write about this one thing, and I can include a quote there. Most of that work's already been done by somebody else.
Right. Like if you're working on an undergraduate paper, you're not doing a whole lot of novel research, right? So I always found that because I really struggle with introductions, I never know how to get that first hook into the material.
Yeah.
I found that writing out a skeleton of the argument I was making, finding supporting material from either primary text or the critical field, and just mentally cataloging how my argument was going to go. And then I could kind of, whatever I felt like working on, I was able to then just go with that, right? Because I knew how everything had to come together, and I knew what all the connective tissue had to look like, so I could just do whatever. And I found that tremendously liberating, because the introduction and the conclusion are, they're rhetorical, right?
Yeah.
They're often
very summative.
The introduction and ending are often like the last things I'll end up working on. And just like start in the middle, just pick anything, just start writing something down. Write down just a bunch of stuff, and then start reorganizing it, and then start fleshing things out, and then
That's how I do it. I make my jot notes of just like all the stuff I'm going to sort out, and I just write something.
Yeah.
I don't care how trashy it is, and then I make all that middle bit nice and smooth, and then I write like 20 revisions of the opening and ending until the opening and ending flow and sound the way I want them to sound, because their material is so usually irrelevant that it doesn't really matter what the material in them is. It just needs to really sound good to push into the center bit of the stuff that you enjoyed writing.
you also sometimes don't even know what the paper is about until you've written most of it.
Yeah, guilty.
I have done that.
Guilty.
Yep.
Well, not even just from like information standpoint, but like what is the point you're trying to make? And so if you try and draw the conclusion to your point before you've actually figured out what conclusion you're trying to draw, that's maybe doing things out of order. Maybe do the stuff in the middle, then figure out what your point is, then write down your point at the end.
Fair enough, yeah. Also, I really enjoyed the editing process where you would have written what you felt was a really strong paragraph, and then you realize that could actually just be 2 sentences.
Yeah.
And just scooping all of that out felt really cleansing to me.
I really enjoyed the part where you make sure that your word choices are novel, because when you go and you're like, oh, I used this exact same word 6 times in this one paragraph, I should probably make that not sound like that.
Yeah.
Because that sounds real horrible.
There's a a lot of times you're taught to write in, like when you're writing essays from the first time you start writing essays, probably maybe in grade 4 or grade 5, right? Is you're taught to overwrite. You're taught to start developing your ideas, but then start to like be more descriptive and start to add in more adjectives and adverbs, and you're starting to, because those sound smart. So you start to do stuff like that, and the next thing you know is if you've been doing a lot of that and you get used to that process, as you write your way up through high school, you're going to do that more and more. You're going to find that I got to make a word count, I got to adjust my margins and my my line spacing and all that kind of crap. And when you hit university, they know all of that stuff. They've seen it all before, and they're like, I know this is all coming, and it's going to really suck. And maybe you'll get away with some of that in maybe your 100 level courses and stuff. But I did a 400 level selling and sales management course. It's a marketing course. And my prof wasn't having any of that. He had his doctorate, and so I handed in my essay. Which was basically selling myself. That was the idea. He's like, I want you to sell something, but you know yourself the best, so everyone's going to sell themselves. So you're not just applying for a job, you're applying for things in a general sense. I'm like, okay. So I wrote this thing, and I spent like 3 hours on it. I did not spend the requisite like maybe 15 hours I should have spent on it. I just basically burned through it, submitted it. Everyone got theirs back in class. I got mine back with no score. Just see me after class.
Uh-oh.
And so I went to see him, and I'm like, so what happened? Like, well, I don't really understand. He's like, I feel like you could have done better on this. And I didn't think that that was a thing. Like, he had that kind of knowledge of me in class based on, like, the amount of work I've been handing in. But based on just watching me, like, I guess, contribute to discussions or do things, like, he was just kind of like, I feel there's more in you than just what you've done here. I'm like, but I spent time on this. Like, I wrote things that felt really good. Like, I was feeling the flow. I wrote what I thought was very good stuff. And as soon as I said that, he opened to one page. He read one sentence. We both just kind of looked at each other in silence, and I said, I'll rewrite that. And I walked away. And I can't remember what the sentence was, but I was like, I get it. I know what I did wrong. And so I went away, I went downstairs to the labs and spent another 2 hours basically tearing out a whole bunch of stuff and realizing what he wanted was something digestible. He didn't want prose. What he wanted was bullet points. What he wanted was some lists. What he wanted was for me to make this feel more like than just a bunch of paragraphs. What he wanted was something that was actually proving the point, that if people were reading it, that they'd get sold on the things you were putting inside of it. And I'm like, that's actually the power of writing, is efficient communication.
Right.
And that's what I didn't get. So when I handed it back in, he says, I docked you 20%, and I looked down and it was 80%.
Huh.
And I was like,
Nice.
okay, I nailed it.
Right.
So for the teachers program, we have to write a letter of introduction that gets sent out to all the local school districts to introduce us to the actual school boards, etc. And then you get a list being like, you need to talk about all of these things. And it's like a paragraph of things you need to talk about, and there I say, you have one page. And so like I wrote my first draft of this, and my first draft was almost 2 pages long. And I just looked at it being like, all right, what here is the most important pieces? And when I was done cutting my initial content down, I had another quarter of a page to write.
That's not bad. That's
Yeah,
really good
well,
then.
Like in fourth year, when our profs really, really wanted to ruin our lives, they would make us write a 3-page paper,
Oh no.
right?
Ooh, scientific paper?
No.
Or-
This was in English.
Oh, okay.
Because in English, right, like your term papers were these wonderful, like 20-page meadows where you could frolic and just quote things and go through historical contexts and like bring in all kinds of lit theory, and then you would add in some rhetoric, and you would just be able to play. And then a 3-page paper you would look at and go, I don't have access to any of that. I actually have to make a point and get in and get out, and
That's it.
I have to actually think about what I'm writing here. And those were the sweaty nights, let me tell you. Like, it was challenging.
Yeah.
Sorry, Gravity Pike saying, I remember the first draft of my undergraduate senior thesis. I handed it to my advisor, who came back with, no, you guys, these have to actually be good. By the way, just a brief aside, this is a great conversation, but the reason Beej made that noise during Lego is because I found this on Twitter, this image that I sent over to engineering.
Oh, great.
I just found it funny. One cannot think well, love well, sleep well if one has not dined well. Quoted Virginia Woolf and placed above a thing of Jack Link's beef jerky and sun chips.
Steak, pork.
Breakfast of champions.
Those are the two
Steak,
food
punch,
groups,
pork
right?
Yeah.
Crunch and chew.
That'd be stank planks, pork tubes.
Yeah. I mean, I want beef jerky now, but that
I
doesn't...
do too.
Yeah. But still. Anyway. Cameron's sweaty night slaughter. Gross.
School's hard, okay?
Yeah.
And also, yeah, if you're having trouble, that's normal. That's totally normal. Writing papers is a challenge. That's why they give it to you.
Yeah.
That's why your classes so often culminate in these long papers or short papers, depending on what they are. But they're supposed to be challenging. So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that's normal.
Oh, so Xander Betts mentions here, dear Dr. Beach, I wish I had half of the connection with my college profs that you had with that prof. I've had maybe a couple dozen college profs throughout the years. There's only been a couple that I've actually connected with in a way that I felt like they actually cared about what I was doing.
Same.
Most profs do care about what you're doing, but they won't get terribly involved. They have a lot of people they have to look after. But it can happen. You can, don't feel like, man, I'm, so far into my degree or whatever, or I'm in a graduate program, my advisor's just a complete piece of bus or whatever. But you might just run across a prof or a teacher or somebody who actually let you click with, that they really get you right away, or they, or you can form a relationship with.
And also, if you don't oftentimes if you don't make the effort to try to connect with the professor, you just won't. A lot of times professors do want students to come see them, that's why they have their office hours, and a lot of students just never go and they never talk to them. That's a good way to open up that line of communication in the first place and just get to know people in the first place, and that can be really as a builder and a bridge maker.
The weird thing is if you really want to connect with a prof, like if you have a prof that you really like and you really want to get to know them or connect with them or whatever, when you're doing projects or work for them, think of something unusual you can do to kind of to do a thing. I managed to connect with my prof because he in the selling thing he did an exercise where they would blindfold you. You would walk into the room, he'd guide you back into the classroom after he blindfolded you outside the classroom, stand you in front of the classroom with the blindfold on, and he put something in your hands, and whatever that thing was, you had to sell it to the class, blind.
Oh man, that sounds awesome.
It was an amazing exercise, and as somebody who was just starting to do improv acting at the time, that was a really cool thing to be able to do for people, or to do in front of people, is to be like, this is an exercise in whatever I'm given, just roll with it. And that was his reaction to that I did there. When I did that, and I kind of just went all out about this bar of soap and how amazing the soap was and how it would make you feel and how it would be a great gift for your mother on Mother's Day, because it's the kind of, and I just talked about all the scents it came in and all these wonderful things. I just kind of expounded for about 60 seconds about how amazing this bar of soap was. And that's what caught his attention, and I think that's what helped. Is that when you can do unusual things that gets your prof's attention, they think about you. I did another one in my new media course where we had to write reviews. A guy I was working with, who's a graduate student in education. This is an undergrad program for new media. He and I just started working together on doing reviews of TV shows to explain how this stuff fits into different concepts of television and radio studies. And just based on our chemistry, the prof came to us. He's like, "Would you like to record a couple of those for Canadian Learning Television?" And I'm like, "Sure." That's
Rad.
yeah, it's coast to coast, right? National, whatever. And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds like fun." And he says, "Cool. Would you like to record a lot of those?" and so we were like, "Sure, why not?" So we did a few. A lot of people actually got a chance to do a few. But then after we did some, we got to actually go to Access Television Network, which is the Alberta equivalent, and do more of them based on other notes and stuff. We got to deliver other more of these for people in their studio and stuff. It was a really cool thing to do because he just liked our chemistry and we liked how we actually did things with each other. So yeah, get into your projects when your prof gives you projects, because they might react to that with like, I'll give you a cool new opportunity.
Also, one thing I'd like to add, I volunteer with the local college paper, Nexus, for Camosun, and every issue they have a regular feature which is where they interview one of the profs at school, and they have just a set list of 10 questions. They ask them the same questions every issue, and one of them is, what is something you wish your students knew about them? And almost all of them reply with, we care about you. Please come see us. Please talk to us. We want to see you succeed. We care deeply about
We
your
actually
success.
give a bus.
Yeah.
Most
Please.
profs actually do.
Please, for the love of God,
Yeah.
talk to us.
And another thing is that your profs are giving you assignments that they believe that you are capable of completing. I don't think any prof actually wants to see their students fail.
There are some engineering profs who are like, oh, 38% on that? That's fine. That's the
No.
class average. You know, like,
We got Wang Dung.
did we?
Oh.